Emma's life revolved around cleaning and maintaining order in the grand mansion where she worked. She was a humble and hard-working woman, often overlooked by those who lived in luxury. Her days were long, filled with scrubbing floors and polishing silver, but she took pride in her work. She never expected to be noticed by Richard, the arrogant millionaire who owned the mansion. Richard, with his cold demeanor and dismissive attitude, was the last person she thought would invite her to one of his lavish parties. One sunny afternoon, while Emma was dusting the ornate bookshelves in the library, Richard approached her with an air of superiority. He handed her an invitation, smirking as he did so. Confused and wary, Emma took the invitation with trembling hands. It was a formal request to attend a grand gala at the mansion that weekend. Richard's eyes gleamed with mischief as he watched her reaction. Emma felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach, suspecting his intentions were far from kind. As the day of the party approached, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Richard's invitation was a setup. She had heard rumors of his cruel pranks and belittling behavior towards those he deemed beneath him. Despite her reservations, a small part of her was curious. Maybe, just maybe, she could attend the party and slip away unnoticed. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be that simple. The more she thought about it, the more determined she became to face whatever awaited her. Emma spent the night before the party in restless sleep, haunted by thoughts of what might happen. She replayed countless scenarios in her mind, each one more humiliating than the last. But amidst her fears, there was a flicker of resolve. She decided she would go to the party not as a victim, but with her head held high. If Richard intended to mock her, she would show him that she was not so easily broken. With this newfound determination, Emma began to prepare for the event. On the morning of the party, Emma felt a mix of excitement and dread. She had never attended such a grand event before and had no idea what to wear. She rummaged through her modest wardrobe, finally settling on a simple but elegant dress she had saved for special occasions. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and well kept. As she got ready, she couldn't help but wonder how the rich and powerful guests would react to her presence. She knew she would stand out, but she hoped to blend in just enough to avoid attention. Emma's heart raced as she walked up the driveway to the mansion, now transformed with twinkling lights and elegant decorations. She could hear the laughter and music from inside, a stark contrast to the silent anticipation that gripped her. Taking a deep breath, she stepped through the grand entrance, her eyes widening at the opulence that surrounded her. Crystal chandeliers, fine art, and impeccably dressed guests filled the space. She felt 1,000 eyes turned towards her, some curious, others disdainful. The initial wave of whispers and glances was almost too much to bear. Emma felt the heat rise in her cheeks, her palms sweaty with anxiety. She moved through the crowd, trying to stay on the outskirts and avoid direct confrontation. But it seemed Richard had other plans. She spotted him across the room, surrounded by his affluent friends, all laughing and casting mocking glances her way. It was clear that her presence was meant to be a source of amusement for them. Emma's resolve was tested as she navigated the party, trying to maintain her composure. Despite her best efforts to remain invisible, Emma found herself constantly under scrutiny. She overheard snippets of conversations, cruel comments about her dress, her posture, her very presence. Each remark was like a dagger, but she pressed on, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing her falter. She spotted a few friendly faces, other employees who had been invited, but even they seemed unsure how to interact with her in this new context. The isolation was palpable, but Emma refused to let it break her spirit. As the evening wore on, Emma found a quiet corner where she could collect her thoughts. She watched the guests mingling, their laughter and frivolity a stark contrast to the turmoil she felt inside. Just as she began to feel a bit more at ease, Richard's voice cut through the air, calling for everyone's attention. Her heart sank as she saw him standing on a small stage, a smug smile on his face. He gestured for her to join him, and the room fell silent. Emma's legs felt like lead as she made her way to the front, every step echoing with dread. Richard's eyes gleamed with malicious intent as he handed Emma the microphone. He addressed the crowd, his tone dripping with sarcasm, introducing her as their special guest for the evening. Emma's hands shook as she held the microphone, feeling the weight of every mocking stare. Richard's cruel plan was clear now. He wanted to humiliate her in front of everyone. The silence was deafening as she stood there, the pressure mounting with each passing second. But then, something shifted inside her. Taking a deep breath, Emma looked out at the sea of faces, her voice steady as she began to speak. She shared her story, her journey, the hardships she had faced, and the strength it had taken to endure. Her words were raw, filled with emotion and honesty. She spoke not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever felt small, overlooked, or undervalued. As she continued, a hush fell over the crowd. The sneers and snickers faded, replaced by a growing sense of respect and admiration. The guests were visibly moved by Emma's story. Her dignity and grace in the face of such blatant cruelty struck a chord with many. They began to see her not as a mere servant, but as a person of immense strength and character. Whispers of support and admiration spread through the crowd. Even those who had initially joined in Richard's mockery found themselves rethinking their actions. Emma's words had pierced through their superficial judgments, revealing a profound truth about humanity and resilience. By the end of her speech, Emma had captivated the entire room. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically, from one of cruel entertainment to one of profound reflection. People approached her, offering apologies and words of encouragement. Some even extended job offers, recognizing her potential and the value she could bring. Richard, meanwhile, stood off to the side, his confidence shattered. The humiliation he had intended for Emma had backfired, leaving him exposed as the true villain of the evening. Emma felt a sense of vindication and newfound hope as she interacted with the guests. The support and opportunities they offered were overwhelming, a stark contrast to the disdain she had faced at the start of the night. She realized that this moment, born out of cruelty, had become a turning point in her life. The kindness and respect she received reaffirmed her belief in her own worth. Emma left the party not as a humiliated servant, but as a woman empowered by her own resilience and the support of those who had seen her true strength. Emma awoke with a flutter of nerves in her stomach, the invitation to Richard's party weighing heavily on her mind. She felt a mix of dread and determination, knowing she had to face whatever lay ahead. With careful thought, she selected a simple but elegant dress from her modest wardrobe, hoping it would be enough to blend in without drawing too much attention. Her heart raced as she imagined the grandeur of the event and the eyes that would inevitably be on her. Throughout the day, Emma went about her chores with an unusual focus, her mind drifting to the evening's event. She couldn't help but wonder why Richard had invited her. She suspected his intentions weren't kind, but she held on to a sliver of hope that she might be wrong. As the hours passed, she practiced standing tall and speaking confidently, determined not to let fear get the better of her. Each task she completed brought her one step closer to the inevitable moment. As the sun began to set, Emma took a deep breath and started getting ready. She washed and styled her hair, applying a touch of makeup with a shaky hand. Each stroke of the brush felt like an act of defiance against the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. She looked at herself in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. For a moment, she felt a flicker of pride. Despite her humble background, she knew she had every right to be there. Emma's heart pounded as she slipped into her dress, the fabric feeling both foreign and comforting against her skin. She straightened her posture, reminding herself that she was more than just a servant. She was a person with her own story, her own struggles, and her own strengths. As she put on her shoes, she thought about the countless hours she had spent cleaning those very floors, and the irony of now walking on them as a guest. It gave her a sense of quiet resolve. With a final glance in the mirror, Emma grabbed her small clutch and headed out the door. The evening air was cool against her skin, calming her nerves slightly as she made her way to the mansion. Each step felt like a journey into the unknown, filled with both fear and anticipation. She kept her head high, reminding herself that she was doing this not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been made to feel small. Her determination fueled her resolve. The closer Emma got to the mansion, the louder the sounds of laughter and music became. It was a world she had only glimpsed from the outside, and now she was about to step into it. As she approached the grand entrance, she felt the weight of the night ahead pressing down on her. But she pushed through, her steps steady and her gaze forward. She knew this was a moment that could change everything, and she was ready to face whatever came her way. Emma was greeted by a butler who looked at her with a mix of surprise and curiosity. She handed him her invitation, his eyebrows raising slightly as he read it. He nodded and gestured for her to enter, opening the door to a world of opulence and grandeur. The sight took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers, luxurious decorations, and impeccably dressed guests filled the space. She took a deep breath and stepped inside, feeling both out of place and strangely empowered. As Emma walked through the mansion, she felt the eyes of the guests on her. Whispers and glances followed her every move, but she kept her head high. She reminded herself that she had every right to be there, just like anyone else. She found a quiet corner where she could observe the room and gather her thoughts. The extravagance around her was overwhelming, but she focused on staying calm and composed. She knew she couldn't let them see her fear. Emma spotted a few familiar faces among the sea of strangers, other staff members who had also been invited. They gave her encouraging smiles, their presence a small comfort in the midst of the overwhelming crowd. She exchanged a few words with them, feeling a bit more grounded. But the looming presence of Richard and his friends kept her on edge. She knew their eyes were on her, waiting for the moment to strike. She steeled herself, ready for whatever came next. As the night wore on, Emma found herself blending into the background, watching the interactions around her. The guests seemed oblivious to her presence, caught up in their own conversations and laughter. It gave her a sense of relief, allowing her to breathe a bit easier. She sipped on a glass of water, her mind racing with thoughts of what might happen next. Despite the uncertainty, she felt a growing sense of determination. She was here, and she wasn't going to back down. Emma couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between her own feelings of anxiety and the carefree attitudes of the guests. They moved with ease, their laughter and chatter filling the room. It was a world so different from her own, yet she was now a part of it, if only for a night. She watched as Richard mingled with his friends, their glances occasionally drifting her way. She knew they were waiting for their moment, but she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her falter. With each passing minute, Emma's confidence grew. She mingled with a few guests, engaging in polite conversation. Despite her nerves, she found herself able to hold her own. Her humility and grace seemed to surprise those who spoke with her, slowly breaking down their preconceived notions. Emma felt a sense of pride as she navigated the social maze, proving to herself that she belonged there. She knew the night wasn't over yet, but she felt more prepared for whatever lay ahead. As the clock ticked closer to the main event, Emma could feel the tension in the air. The guests were beginning to gather in the main hall, where Richard was preparing to address them. She knew her moment was coming, the one she had dreaded and anticipated in equal measure. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the strength she had found within. Whatever happened next, She was ready to face it head-on, with dignity and courage. The night was far from over, and Emma was prepared to make her stand. Emma's hands trembled as she approached the grand entrance of the mansion. The opulence was overwhelming, with marble columns and sparkling chandeliers that seemed almost too extravagant to be real. She felt the weight of every gaze as she stepped inside, each pair of eyes assessing, judging. The laughter and music that filled the air only heightened her anxiety, making her feel even more out of place. But she kept her head high, determined to face whatever awaited her. The room was filled with elegantly dressed guests, their outfits shimmering under the golden light. Emma's modest dress felt like a glaring contrast against the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits. She could hear the whispers and feel the stares as she moved through the crowd, her heart pounding in her chest. She forced herself to focus on her breathing, trying to maintain her composure. Every step felt like a challenge, but she was determined not to let her fears show. As she navigated the room, Emma couldn't help but notice the disdainful looks thrown her way. Some guests whispered behind their hands, their expressions a mix of curiosity and contempt. She overheard snippets of conversations, cruel comments about her appearance and speculations about why she was there. Each word stung, but Emma pressed on, refusing to let their harsh judgments break her spirit. She had faced worse in her life, and she would not be defeated by their cruelty. Emma found a quiet corner where she could collect her thoughts, her back against the cool marble wall. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on Richard, who was surrounded by a group of equally arrogant friends. They laughed and chatted, occasionally glancing her way with smirks on their faces. Emma's stomach churned with a mix of anger and fear. She knew Richard had something planned, and she braced herself for whatever humiliation he had in store. Despite her nerves, Emma couldn't help but notice the beauty of the mansion. The grandeur of the decorations, the intricate details in the architecture, and the elegance of the guests all painted a picture of a world she had only ever observed from the outside. It was a stark reminder of the divide between her life and theirs. But instead of feeling bitter, Emma felt a surge of determination. She had worked hard and deserved to be treated with respect, regardless of her background. As the evening progressed, Emma tried to blend into the background, hoping to avoid further scrutiny. She watched as the guests mingled, their laughter and conversation flowing effortlessly. She felt like an outsider looking in, a feeling that was both isolating and empowering. Despite the disdainful looks and whispered comments, she was here, standing among them. It was a small victory in itself, and she held on to that thought like a lifeline. Emma's resolve was tested when a particularly bold guest approached her, a sneer on his face. He questioned her presence, his tone dripping with condescension. Emma took a deep breath, summoning the strength to respond with dignity. She explained that she had been invited, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. The guest scoffed and walked away, but Emma felt a small spark of pride. She had stood her ground, and that was enough for now. Throughout the night, Emma found herself on the receiving end of many curious glances. Some guests seemed genuinely intrigued, while others appeared to be waiting for her to make a mistake. She felt like a spectacle, a source of entertainment for the privileged crowd. But with each passing moment, her resolve grew stronger. She refused to be seen as a victim. She was here to prove that she was more than just a humble servant. She had a story, a voice, and she intended to use it. As the party continued, Emma couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She noticed Richard's eyes on her, a calculating look in his gaze. He seemed to be biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Emma's anxiety mounted, but she reminded herself of her purpose. She was here to show them all that she was not to be underestimated. The thought gave her strength, and she steeled herself for whatever was to come. Emma's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of clinking glasses, signaling a toast. Richard stood at the center of the room, his presence commanding attention. The guests turned towards him, their conversations fading into silence. Emma felt a chill run down her spine as she realized this was the moment she had been dreading. Richard's eyes locked onto hers, a cruel smile playing on his lips. She braced herself, knowing that the next few minutes could change everything. Richard began his speech, his voice smooth and confident. He talked about the importance of community and charity, his words dripping with insincerity. Emma felt a surge of anger at his hypocrisy. Here was a man who thrived on belittling others, now pretending to care about kindness and generosity. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she fought to maintain her composure. She knew he was setting the stage for her humiliation. As Richard's speech came to an end, he gestured towards Emma, inviting her to join him at the center of the room. The guests turned to look at her, their expressions ranging from curious to pitying. Emma felt a wave of nausea, but forced herself to move forward. She could feel every eye on her, the pressure almost unbearable, but she walked with her head held high, refusing to let them see her fear. She had come this far, and she wouldn't back down now. When Emma reached the center of the room, Richard handed her the microphone, his eyes gleaming with malice. She could feel the weight of the moment, the anticipation of the crowd. Richard's intention was clear. He wanted to see her falter, to enjoy her discomfort. But Emma took a deep breath, her grip on the microphone tightening. She looked out at the sea of faces, her mind racing with thoughts of what to say. And then, she began to speak, her voice steady and strong. Emma's words flowed with a mix of vulnerability and strength. She spoke of her life, her struggles, and her journey. She shared stories of resilience and hope, her voice unwavering despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. As she spoke, the room grew silent, the guests hanging on her every word. Emma felt a sense of empowerment she had never known before. This was her moment, and she was reclaiming it. With each sentence, she could see the impact of her words. The guests' reactions shifted from curiosity to admiration as Emma continued. She spoke with a raw honesty that cut through their superficial judgments. Her story resonated with them, breaking down the walls of privilege and prejudice. Emma could see the change in their eyes, the respect and understanding replacing the disdain. Even Richard's smug expression faltered, replaced by a look of disbelief. Emma's courage had turned the tide, and she stood at the center of it all, triumphant. Richard had always enjoyed playing the role of the sophisticated host, but behind his charming facade lay a penchant for cruelty. His wealth and power had given him a sense of invincibility, allowing him to manipulate those around him for his amusement. When he saw Emma, his humble housekeeper, quietly going about her duties, an idea took root in his mind. What better way to entertain his elite friends than by inviting someone so clearly out of place to their exclusive gathering? Richard's intentions were far from innocent. He saw Emma's presence at the party as a perfect opportunity to showcase his superiority. His plan was to subtly undermine her, using her as the butt of his cruel jokes. He relished the thought of watching her squirm under the disdainful eyes of his guests. For Richard, it wasn't enough to be powerful. He needed to feel it by exerting control over those less fortunate, turning their discomfort into his entertainment. In the days leading up to the party, Richard shared his plan with a few close friends, their laughter echoing through the opulent halls of the mansion. They all eagerly anticipated the event, imagining the look on Emma's face as she realized she was the night's unwitting entertainment. Richard's friends, equally shallow and cruel, fed off his malice, each adding their own suggestions for how to make the night even more humiliating for her. It was a twisted game for them, one that revealed the darkness behind their polished exteriors. Richard had always prided himself on his ability to control situations and people. His invitation to Emma was a calculated move, designed to strip her of any semblance of dignity. He imagined the moment she would arrive, the room falling silent as all eyes turned to her, an intruder in their world of luxury. He anticipated the whispers, the laughter, the collective mockery. It was all a part of his grand design, a testament to his power over others. The night of the party, Richard watched Emma's every move with a predatory gaze. He saw her nervous glances, her attempts to blend into the background, and it thrilled him. Each moment she spent in the spotlight, each derisive comment she overheard, was a victory for him. He moved through the crowd with an air of satisfaction, knowing that he had orchestrated this scene. His friends played along, each interaction with Emma dripping with condescension and false politeness. As the evening progressed, Richard's anticipation grew. He knew the highlight of his plan was yet to come, the moment when he would call Emma to the stage. He envisioned the look of panic on her face, the way she would fumble and falter under the pressure. It was a cruel fantasy, but one that he reveled in. He thrived on the power he held over her, and he couldn't wait to see her crumble. The thought of her humiliation filled him with a sense of triumph. Richard's plan was as much about bolstering his own ego as it was about entertaining his guests. By belittling Emma, he reaffirmed his place at the top of the social hierarchy. He saw her as a pawn, a means to an end. Her suffering was inconsequential to him. It was simply a byproduct of his need to assert dominance. In his eyes, Emma's very presence at the party was a testament to his control over her life. It was a game, and he intended to win. As the time for his speech approached, Richard felt a rush of exhilaration. The moment was finally here. He gathered his friends, positioning them strategically around the room to ensure they had a clear view of Emma's impending humiliation. He took the stage with a confident stride, his voice commanding attention as he began his address. He spoke of charity and kindness, his words laced with irony, given his true intentions. The crowd listened intently, unaware of the cruelty behind his smile. Richard's speech was a masterclass in manipulation. He painted a picture of generosity, weaving tales of compassion that belied his true nature. As he spoke, he kept an eye on Emma, savoring the anxiety etched on her face. He knew that with each passing moment, her discomfort grew. It was all leading up to the climax of his plan. He reveled in the power he held, the control he exerted over the evening's events. It was a performance, and he was the master conductor. When Richard finally called Emma to the stage, the room fell silent. He watched her walk towards him, her steps hesitant, but her head held high. For a moment, he felt a flicker of doubt, a sense that perhaps he had underestimated her. But he quickly brushed it aside, confident in his ability to control the situation. He handed her the microphone, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the culmination of his carefully laid plans. Richard expected Emma to falter, to be overwhelmed by the spotlight and the judgmental eyes of the crowd. He anticipated her voice trembling, her words stumbling, as she struggled to find her footing. But as she began to speak, something unexpected happened. Her voice was steady, her words clear and powerful. She spoke not with fear, but with a quiet strength that caught him off guard. Richard's smirk faltered, replaced by a look of surprise. This was not how he had envisioned the night unfolding. As Emma continued, Richard felt a shift in the room. The guests, who had been poised to mock, now listened intently, their expressions softening with each word she spoke. Emma's story was one of resilience, of strength in the face of adversity. It was a stark contrast to the shallow lives they led. Richard's carefully constructed plan was unraveling before his eyes, his control slipping away. He watched, helpless, as the power dynamic shifted. Emma was no longer the victim. She was the victor, her dignity intact. Richard's plan had backfired spectacularly. Instead of humiliating Emma, he had given her a platform to showcase her strength and resilience. The guests, moved by her story, began to see her in a new light. They turned their attention to Richard, their eyes filled with disdain. The very act he had orchestrated to belittle her had only served to expose his own cruelty. Emma stood tall, her presence commanding respect, while Richard felt the sting of his own defeat. As the evening reached its peak, the energy in the room became electric. Richard, sensing the perfect moment, made his way to the stage. He held the microphone with an air of authority, his voice cutting through the ambient noise. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his tone dripping with false warmth, "I want to take a moment to recognize a very special guest tonight." His eyes found Emma in the crowd, and a predatory smile spread across his face. Emma felt a chill run down her spine as Richard's gaze locked onto hers. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned towards her. Her heart pounded in her chest, her palms sweating as she realized this was the moment she had dreaded. Richard's voice echoed through the grand hall, each word feeling like a calculated blow. "Emma, would you join me on stage?" he asked, his invitation sounding more like a command. She swallowed hard, forcing her feet to move. The walk to the stage felt like an eternity. Emma could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes on her, the whispers growing louder with each step. She reached the stage, her legs trembling as she climbed the steps. Richard handed her the microphone, his smile widening. "Tell us about yourself, Emma," he said, stepping back to give her the spotlight. The room was eerily quiet, the anticipation palpable. Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing. For a moment, Emma stood frozen, her thoughts a chaotic swirl of fear and doubt. She could see Richard's smug face in the corner of her vision, his confidence in her impending humiliation clear. The guests watched her with a mix of curiosity and expectation, waiting for her to crumble. But then, something inside her shifted. A sense of calm washed over her, and she straightened her posture, gripping the microphone with newfound determination. Emma's voice, when she finally spoke, was steady and clear. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her eyes scanning the crowd. "My name is Emma, and I'm a housekeeper here." She paused, feeling the tension in the room. "I've spent years cleaning these halls, taking care of this home, and serving many of you." She could see the surprise on their faces, the shift in their expressions. Emma continued, her words gathering strength. "But there's more to my story than just the work I do." She spoke of her life, the hardships she had endured, and the sacrifices she had made. Her voice grew stronger with each word, her confidence building. She talked about her dreams, her aspirations, and the strength it took to face each day with dignity. The room, once filled with whispers and judgment, now hung on her every word. Emma's story resonated with them, breaking through their superficial judgments and touching something deeper. Richard's plan was unraveling. Richard watched in disbelief as Emma captivated the audience. His smug smile had faded, replaced by a look of frustration. He had expected her to falter, to be overwhelmed by the moment. Instead, she stood before them with a grace and strength that defied his cruel intentions. The guests, who had initially been poised to mock her, now listened intently, their attitudes shifting. Emma's words were powerful, her story compelling, and they could not help but be moved by her. As Emma continued, she could feel the support of the crowd growing. Her voice never wavered, her words flowing with an honesty and vulnerability that was impossible to ignore. She spoke of the value of hard work, the importance of treating others with respect, and the strength it took to overcome adversity. The room was silent, the guests hanging on her every word. Emma's courage had turned the tide, and she stood at the center of it all, victorious. Richard's plan had backfired spectacularly. Instead of humiliating Emma, he had given her a platform to showcase her resilience and strength. The guests, moved by her story, began to see her in a new light. They turned their attention to Richard, their eyes filled with disdain. The very act he had orchestrated to belittle her had only served to expose his own cruelty. Emma stood tall, her presence commanding respect, while Richard felt the sting of his own defeat. The atmosphere in the room had shifted dramatically. The guests, who had come expecting a night of frivolity and entertainment, found themselves deeply affected by Emma's words. They began to applaud, a slow ripple of claps that grew into a standing ovation. Emma's heart swelled with emotion, her eyes brimming with tears of gratitude. She had faced her greatest fear and emerged not only unscathed but triumphant. The applause was a testament to her strength and dignity. Richard stood off to the side, his face a mask of anger and embarrassment. His plan had not only failed but had spectacularly backfired, leaving him exposed as the villain of the evening. The guests, once his loyal followers, now looked at him with a mixture of pity and disdain. His power over them had been shattered by Emma's courage and authenticity. He had underestimated her, and now he was paying the price. Emma's speech came to an end, and she handed the microphone back to Richard, her head held high. The applause continued, the guests' admiration for her palpable. Richard, at a loss for words, took the microphone with a shaky hand. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark contrast to the applause that had filled the room moments before. He stumbled through a few closing remarks, his confidence shattered. The guests' eyes remained on Emma, their respect for her evident. As the evening drew to a close, Emma was approached by several guests, each offering words of encouragement and support. Some even extended job offers, recognizing her potential and the value she could bring. Richard watched from a distance, his defeat complete. Emma had not only survived his cruel plan, but had turned it into an opportunity for growth and empowerment. She left the party with a renewed sense of hope, knowing that she had proven her worth beyond any doubt. Emma's journey had taken an unexpected turn, transforming a night of intended humiliation into a celebration of her strength and resilience. She had faced the cruelty of Richard and emerged victorious, her dignity intact. The support and opportunities she received from the guests reaffirmed her belief in herself. Emma knew that her future was bright, filled with possibilities she had never imagined. As she left the mansion that night, she felt a sense of liberation and newfound confidence. Emma stood at the center of the room, the weight of the microphone heavy in her hand. The sea of faces before her blurred slightly as she fought to control her nerves. Taking a deep breath, she steadied herself and began to speak, her voice clear and unwavering. "Good evening," she said, her eyes scanning the room. "I am Emma, and tonight, I want to share my story with you." The room fell silent, the guests now captivated by her unexpected poise. She started with her childhood, painting a picture of her humble beginnings. Emma spoke of the challenges she faced growing up, her family's struggles to make ends meet, and the early loss of her parents. Her voice, though calm, carried the weight of her experiences, and the room seemed to lean in closer. She described the sense of responsibility that fell on her shoulders and her determination to rise above her circumstances. Every word she spoke was filled with authenticity, drawing the audience into her world. Emma's story moved on to her teenage years, where she juggled school and multiple jobs to support her siblings. She recounted her days working tirelessly, often sacrificing her own dreams to ensure her family's well-being. The guests, many of whom had never faced such hardships, listened intently. Her resilience and dedication shone through her words, and she could see their expressions softening, their judgmental gazes now filled with empathy and respect. As she continued, Emma spoke of her journey to the city, where she sought better opportunities. She described the difficulties of finding stable work and the countless rejections she faced. Despite the setbacks, she never gave up, driven by the hope of a better future. Her determination resonated with the audience, many of whom began to see her in a new light. Emma's story was one of unwavering perseverance, and it struck a chord with everyone in the room. Emma then addressed her current position as a housekeeper. She spoke with pride about her work, emphasizing the dignity in every task she performed. "I am more than just my job," she said, her voice strong. "I am a person with dreams, hopes, and a story that matters." Her words hung in the air, challenging the audience to reconsider their perceptions. She could feel the atmosphere in the room shifting, the respect for her growing with each sentence. She shared the sacrifices she made, the dreams she put on hold to support her family, and the small victories that kept her going. Emma's honesty and vulnerability created a powerful connection with the audience. She was no longer just a servant. She was a human being with a profound story. The guests, many of whom had come expecting to be entertained at her expense, were now deeply moved by her courage and strength. As Emma's speech drew to a close, she spoke of the future. "I have dreams," she said, her eyes shining with determination, "and I will continue to work hard to achieve them." She paused, looking around the room. "I hope my story reminds you that everyone has a journey, and everyone deserves respect." The applause that followed was immediate and thunderous, a stark contrast to the earlier murmurs of disdain. Emma had not only captured their attention, she had won their admiration. The reaction of the guests was overwhelming. Many approached her after the speech, offering words of encouragement and support. They expressed their admiration for her strength and resilience, and some even extended offers of assistance and new opportunities. Emma felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over her. The very people who had once looked down on her now saw her for who she truly was. It was a vindication of her worth and a powerful affirmation of her courage. Richard, on the other hand, stood off to the side, his face pale and expressionless. His plan to humiliate Emma had backfired spectacularly. Instead of breaking her, he had given her a platform to shine. The guests, who had once been eager to share in his cruel joke, now looked at him with disapproval. The power dynamics had shifted, and Richard found himself the subject of their disdain. Emma's triumph had exposed his pettiness, leaving him isolated and humiliated. Emma's heart swelled with a sense of achievement and newfound hope. The evening, which she had dreaded, had turned into a pivotal moment in her life. She had faced her fears head-on and emerged victorious. The support and opportunities offered by the guests were more than she had ever imagined. She realized that her story had the power to change not only her own life, but also the lives of those who listened. It was a humbling and empowering revelation. As the night came to an end, Emma left the mansion with a sense of pride and determination. The applause, the kind words, and the opportunities offered to her were a testament to her strength and resilience. She had transformed a moment of intended humiliation into a celebration of her journey. Emma knew that this was just the beginning. She had proven to herself and to everyone else that she was more than capable of overcoming any challenge that came her way. Walking away from the mansion, Emma felt a sense of liberation. She had faced her greatest fear and had not only survived but thrived. The respect and support she had garnered from the guests filled her with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that her future was bright, and she was ready to embrace it with open arms. Emma had turned a night of cruelty into a triumph of dignity and strength, and she was ready for whatever came next. Emma's journey was far from over, but she now faced it with a renewed sense of confidence and hope. The evening had shown her that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. She had stood up to Richard's cruelty and emerged victorious, her dignity intact. As she looked ahead, Emma knew that she would continue to work hard, pursue her dreams, and inspire others with her story. The future was hers to shape, and she was ready to embrace it. The room was silent as Emma finished speaking, her words lingering in the air like an unspoken challenge. The guests, who had initially been prepared to mock her, were now stunned into silence. Emma's story had pierced through their superficiality, forcing them to confront their own prejudices and assumptions. One by one, they began to clap, slowly at first, then building into a powerful, unified applause. Emma stood tall, her heart swelling with a mix of relief and pride. Many of the guests approached Emma after her speech, their expressions transformed from scorn to admiration. They introduced themselves, offering words of encouragement and apologies for their earlier behavior. Some shared their own stories of struggle, creating a bond of shared humanity that transcended social class. Emma listened, her heart warming at the genuine connections she was making. The support was overwhelming, and she felt a new sense of belonging among these once dismissive strangers. A few guests, visibly moved by Emma's story, offered her new opportunities. One woman, a successful business owner, handed Emma her card, inviting her to interview for a position in her company. A man in his 40s, who had remained quiet throughout the evening, approached with a similar offer, recognizing Emma's resilience and potential. Each gesture was a testament to the impact of her words, opening doors she had never imagined possible. Amid the flurry of newfound support, Emma noticed Richard standing alone, his face a mask of humiliation and anger. The guests who had once fawned over him now avoided his gaze, their disdain evident. His carefully constructed facade of superiority had crumbled, exposed by Emma's bravery. Richard's power over the room had evaporated, leaving him isolated and discredited. Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of justice, knowing that his cruel intentions had led to his own downfall. Emma's triumph had a ripple effect, prompting the guests to reflect on their own lives and attitudes. Conversations turned introspective as they discussed the importance of empathy and understanding. Many expressed regret for their previous judgments, vowing to be more considerate in the future. The party, which had begun as a display of wealth and power, had transformed into a gathering of individuals seeking genuine human connection. Emma's story had sparked a change in them, altering their perspectives in profound ways. As the evening progressed, Emma continued to receive an outpouring of support. Guests surrounded her, eager to learn more about her journey and offer their assistance. Some promised to recommend her for positions within their own networks, while others offered financial aid for her education. Emma felt a surge of hope and gratitude, each offer a reminder that her story had the power to inspire change. The overwhelming kindness contrasted sharply with the disdain she had initially faced, reaffirming her belief in the goodness of people. Emma's interactions with the guests were heartfelt and sincere. She thanked each person who approached her, expressing her appreciation for their support. The humility and grace with which she handled the attention only deepened their respect for her. Emma's authenticity shone through, endearing her to everyone she spoke with. The connections she made that night were not just fleeting moments of sympathy, but the beginnings of lasting relationships built on mutual respect and understanding. As the party began to wind down, Emma found herself surrounded by a small group of guests who had been particularly touched by her story. They talked late into the night, sharing experiences and dreams. Emma felt a sense of camaraderie she had never known before, a feeling of being truly seen and valued. The isolation she had felt at the beginning of the evening was now replaced with a profound sense of community. Her journey had not only changed her own life, but had also touched the lives of those around her. Despite the outpouring of support, Emma knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The opportunities presented to her were just the beginning of a new chapter. She would need to work hard to seize them, continuing to demonstrate the resilience and determination that had brought her this far. But she felt ready for the challenge, bolstered by the encouragement and respect she had gained. Emma's future was filled with promise, and she was prepared to embrace it fully. Richard's defeat was a stark reminder of the power of authenticity and integrity. His attempt to humiliate Emma had only served to reveal his own pettiness and cruelty. The guests, once enamored by his wealth and charm, now saw him for what he truly was. Emma's strength had exposed his weakness, and he was left to face the consequences of his actions. Richard's isolation was a fitting end to his plan, a testament to the fact that true power lies not in wealth or status, but in the strength of one's character. Emma left the mansion that night with a sense of triumph and a heart full of hope. The support and opportunities she had received were beyond anything she had ever imagined. She knew that her life was about to change in ways she could not yet comprehend. As she walked away, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The hardships, the sacrifices, and the unwavering determination had all led to this point. Emma felt a profound sense of gratitude for the strength that had carried her through. The night had been a turning point, not just for Emma but for everyone present. Her story had challenged them to reconsider their values and the way they viewed the world. The impact of her words would be felt long after the party ended, as each guest carried the lessons they had learned into their own lives. Emma's journey was far from over, but she now faced it with a renewed sense of purpose and a community of supporters by her side. She had proven that dignity and courage could overcome even the greatest adversity. As she walked home, Emma felt a sense of peace she had not known in a long time. The challenges ahead seemed less daunting with the knowledge that she was not alone. The kindness and support of the guests had given her a new perspective on life and her own potential. Emma knew that she would continue to work hard, but she now did so with the belief that her dreams were within reach. The night had transformed her life, and she was ready to embrace the future with open arms. As the guests began to leave, the atmosphere in the mansion was markedly different from when the night had begun. Emma stood in a small group, surrounded by people who had once seen her as nothing more than a servant. Now, they looked at her with respect and admiration. The businesswoman who had given her a card earlier approached again, this time with a more concrete offer. "We need someone with your determination and resilience," she said warmly. "I think you'd be a perfect fit for our team." Another guest, a philanthropist who had remained quiet for most of the evening, stepped forward. "I run a foundation that helps underprivileged youth gain access to education and career opportunities. I'd like to offer you a scholarship to pursue any training or education you need to follow your dreams," he said, his eyes reflecting genuine compassion. Emma was overwhelmed by the generosity she was receiving, each offer a beacon of hope for her future. As word of Emma's story spread among the remaining guests, more and more people approached her with similar offers. Some wanted to help her find better employment, while others offered mentorship and support. The room buzzed with an energy of transformation and possibility. Emma felt a deep sense of gratitude and determination. She had always known she was capable of more, and now, these opportunities were within her grasp. She thanked each person sincerely, her heart full. Richard, meanwhile, was a shadow of his former self. The guests who had once eagerly sought his favor now avoided him. Their admiration transferred to Emma. He watched from the sidelines, his face pale with humiliation and regret. His plan to belittle Emma had not only failed but had spectacularly backfired, leaving him to face the scorn and disapproval of his peers. It was a humbling experience, one that forced him to confront the shallowness of his own character. One of Richard's closest friends approached Emma, his demeanor apologetic. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice sincere. "We all do." Richard's behavior was unacceptable, and we were complicit by staying silent. "I'm sorry for any pain we've caused you." Emma looked at him, seeing the remorse in his eyes. She nodded, accepting his apology with grace. It was a small but significant step towards healing the wounds of the night. The guests slowly trickled out, each one stopping to offer Emma a few last words of encouragement. As the mansion emptied, Emma found herself standing alone in the grand hall. The opulence that had once felt so intimidating now seemed almost insignificant. What mattered were the connections she had made and the opportunities that awaited her. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the night lift from her shoulders. The future was bright, and she was ready to embrace it. Emma walked towards the exit, her heart light with hope and determination. She knew the road ahead would still have its challenges, but she felt more prepared than ever to face them. The support she had received tonight was a testament to her strength and resilience. As she stepped out into the cool night air, she felt a sense of freedom and possibility. The world seemed full of opportunities, and she was eager to seize them. Her phone buzzed with new messages and contact requests from the guests she had met. Each notification was a reminder of the connections she had forged and the support that now surrounded her. Emma smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart that she hadn't felt in a long time. She sent a few quick responses, setting up meetings and interviews for the coming days. The path ahead was clearer now, paved with the kindness and generosity of those who had seen her true worth. Emma's journey had taken an unexpected turn, leading her to a place of hope and opportunity. She reflected on the night's events, realizing that Richard's cruelty had inadvertently given her a platform to shine. She had turned a moment of intended humiliation into a powerful statement of her own strength and resilience. The support she had received reaffirmed her belief in the goodness of people and the importance of staying true to oneself. As she made her way home, Emma felt a profound sense of gratitude. The night had not only changed her life, but it also opened her eyes to the possibilities that lay ahead. She knew that with hard work and determination, she could achieve her dreams. The opportunities offered to her were just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with promise and potential. Emma was ready to embrace whatever the future held, confident in her own strength and the support of those who believed in her. The next morning, Emma woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The sun shone through her window, casting a warm glow on the possibilities of the day. She got up, feeling lighter and more determined than ever. The offers and support she had received the previous night filled her with optimism. She made a list of tasks and goals, eager to start this new chapter of her life. Each step she took was guided by the confidence that had been reignited within her. Emma's days became a whirlwind of new experiences and opportunities. She attended meetings, explored job offers, and even started planning for further education. The support network she had built at the party continued to grow, each connection bringing new possibilities. Emma's story inspired many, and she found herself invited to speak at events and gatherings. Her journey from housekeeper to a beacon of resilience and hope captivated those who heard it. Through it all, Emma remained grounded, remembering the hard work and sacrifices that had brought her this far. She knew that the journey was just beginning, and there would be challenges ahead, but she faced each day with a sense of purpose and gratitude, knowing that she was capable of overcoming any obstacle. Emma had turned a night of cruelty into a lifetime of opportunities, proving that dignity and resilience could triumph over adversity. Sophia just inherited the family business, but she decides to disguise herself as a cleaning employee to understand her employees' true opinions and attitudes. What she discovers leaves her terrified. The manager she always trusted has been mistreating her daughter. What will Sophia do to protect her family and save the business? Don't miss this story filled with unexpected twists and heartwarming moments. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on our best emotional stories. Also, in the pinned comment, you'll find a link to buy me a coffee, where you can contribute to help us continue bringing these stories to you every day. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you in the next story.